am fourth generation fisherman out of Provincetown. I've lived here my whole life. I've owned my own boat now for 25 years. I started fishing when I was 12 years old with my father on a commercial dragger. Being a boy, I remember running down the pier just to get a ride from on the boat, you know, getting out of school, and it wasn't me, it was a bunch of other kids too. You know, your fathers came in, you were down the pier, you lived down there, you know, and it was like a community. Well, fishing with my dad was probably the best time of my life. I mean, I fished with him on his own boat, I fished with him on other people's boats. There'd be times I'd be doing construction in the winter because of the closures and whatnot, and he'd come by the job and he's like, "We're going scalloping." I would be up, you know, on a roof or something, and I'd be like, "I quit," and I would go fishing. And that was it, just to be with my dad, because my dad was awesome. He was just one of the coolest guys, and if anybody had a love for the ocean, that man, I mean, hands down, that's all he ever wanted to do, and that's all he ever did was fish. That's going away. I mean, you don't see too many fathers and sons. I think there's one on the pier where it's a father and son. I mean, my daughter came for a couple summers and she thought about doing it, and I told her, no, don't, because you don't know how long this is going to last.
What do I worry about the most? Safety. His safety. Everything else is secondary. Money, what he catches in a day, all of that could be worked out. At the end of the day, you know, a bad week can be fixed easily the next week, but his safety cannot. And to me, that is the most important thing to me. As long as he comes home every day, I don't care if he caught 500 lobsters or one. I just want him home.
There's days where you're out here and it's blowing 30 and it's raining, or you know, you're out here in the winter and it's freezing cold and snowing and everything's iced up, but you got to have the love for it, you know. I mean, I leave the dock every day. I love what I do. You know, I mean, I get up every morning, I'm excited to go to work, and not many people can say that.
It's a lifestyle. It's not just a job. It's just not just an occupation. It's who they are as people. It is in their blood. This isn't, you just don't wake up one morning and go, you know what I think I'm gonna do? I'm gonna go out and get a lobster boat.
You're getting $1.50 for your fish. Well, you got $1.50 back in the 80s for your fish, and fuel was 80 cents. You know, I mean, to fix an engine, to do anything on a boat, it used to be like, you know, everybody used to laugh and say it'll $100 you to death. Well, now it'll $1,000 you to death.
You know, I think fishermen's attitudes are complex. You know, it's not just they're anti this or pro that. And so, you know, I do think it's important that we sit and listen to fishermen. You know, and that's a big part of what I do for a job is listen, because, you know, every fisherman has a unique perspective.
So as you get $4.50 a pound for your lobsters, it's the same price we got, you know, when I first started. But a lobster trap was only 35 bucks. A lobster trap's $180 now. A box of bait, they used to be able to get bait for free. A box of bait's $100. You know, fuel's $4 a gallon. Everything, you know, your insurance, your dockages, everything's just gone up so much that your overhead is gigantic.
You know, to be a commercial fisherman today, you have to know so many different sets of regulations that typically the public doesn't.
Well, I think the regulations are the biggest thing. You know, I mean, you cut back, you know, lobster, and I mean, we have more regulations with the whales and closures. And this, the dragger fishermen, you know, they lost their days at sea. You can only go to work so many days. and the expense to keep everything running, and the price. You know, you're still getting the same prices for fish and lobsters that we were back in the 80s. I'd like to see the town meet us halfway and give us, you know, try to build the fishing fleet back up and get some younger guys that, so these younger guys can't afford to come here and tie up here and, you know, between the offloading fees and all that. I mean, I've been in this for 30 years on my own, and I have time struggling with it.
You know, to be a fisherman today, you have to be a little bit of a lawyer, a biologist, an economist, an accountant, a mechanic, you know, all of the traditional things that we think of when it comes to fishing, but also all of these skills, like really knowing the regulatory framework. You know, it's a different world than it was 50 years ago.
But they're constantly complying with what they have to do. They've never fought back. My husband especially has always been big on conservation. He's not out there trying to do more than what he's allowed to do. He would never, he would, you know, he respects the sea, and I think a lot of people forget that.
If you think of Provincetown, how Provincetown was made, it was artists and fishermen. That's what this town started out as. And it, you know, you still have the huge art community, and they do help them, but it's, why wouldn't you help us at the same time? You have the draw, people come to see the boats. People love coming down to ask questions about it. I mean, I can't even tell you how many people I talk to in the course of the season.
They are ambassadors in a way, you know, and I think that that's overlooked. I think it's easy to see, you know, money and yachts and all of these things, but fishing's like a forgotten, it's a forgotten industry in a lot of ways.
The Blessing of the Fleet this year, there was 12 commercial boats in the Blessing. There was more boats tied up than there was at the Blessing. You just don't see it, the whole camaraderie of that whole getting together. And I mean, we had a fisherman's dinner this year and there was 4 fishermen there. Where back in the day for the Blessing of the Fleet, when the old vets was there, there'd be 200 fishermen there, and their wives, and their kids. You know, it could subsidize us a little bit more for our dockage, you know, where, you know, we are a commercial, and, you know, I mean, with all the expenses going up, but it's tough because everything else, I guess, on their end's going up. But, you know, we do need help somewhere along the line to pay our dockages and stuff, because if they keep raising the rates, you know, at 100% every 2 years, you're going to lose all the boats here. Guys are going to leave.
The fishing community is close-knit because they at the end of the day, it's a unique situation. You know, it's unique to them.
You know, I mean, like I said, we have our closures. I've spent thousands and thousands of dollars on markings and weak rope and breakaway links, and I can't even tell you how many times I've gone through all my gear to come up to code. And it, you know, it costs us thousands of dollars, and I lose 6 months of my season. I'd like to see a lot of people try to spend, you know, 100 grand, 50 grand a year in expenses and all this, and then still put food on their table.
Well, I see a lot less boats. You know, years ago in the harbor, you know, there was just a ton of fishing boats, trawlers, scollopers, lobster boats, so many. I don't see as many anymore that I used to see.
The fishermen back in the day, everybody respected them. You know, you had big dinners. There'd be, you know, 10 or 15 guys on a boat helping each other out, mending nets, whatever you needed. There was always 10, 15 guys to come help you, if not more. You know, and now it's kind of just diminished.
And I think that's the biggest part of what we're trying to offer, is this is a very big community that's very, very important to Cape Cod. And why aren't we helping them more, and why aren't we giving them tools and helping to find things for them?
It's hard to understand something if you've never lived it, and this is certainly one of those occupations.
You know, the fishermen, you know, as you've just pointed out, you know, they spend more time on the water typically than most scientists. They see things sometimes in a more detailed level than scientists do, just by nature of how we approach our questions. Scientists, sometimes the way oceanographers study the ocean, or climate scientists, or, some of those other types of science, we're sort of bigger picture. We look at an entire ocean basin, but at a very coarse scale, where fishermen know a patch of ocean so incredibly well in a way that we never can.
Cape Mediation got some funding through MOPSI. And we had to pick an area that we thought wasn't being represented well. We picked fishermen because we felt that they were underrepresented. They're small businesses, they're on their own, there's not a lot for them in terms of support.
Knowing that this is how he grew up, this was the life that he grew up in, and just seeing how it's changed for him since he was a kid, it's hard to say if this is like a sustainable occupation.
I think you're going to lose the whole, the fishing community. I mean, you've lost a lot of it now. I mean, there's only one guy that lives in Provincetown that actually ties his boat to the pier, because you can't afford to live in Provincetown. You can't afford to run a business out of Provincetown. I had to move to Truro because I couldn't afford to buy a house in Provincetown. You couldn't afford to rent a house in Provincetown. So once they move us out, I mean, to them, I think they'll be okay just putting recreational boats, but you're gonna lose the draw of what Provincetown was. And if they do that, then they should take down the sign when you come into Provincetown with the fishermen in their nets, and it says, "Welcome to Provincetown," because that's not what Provincetown is anymore.